Let's get out of here. Quickly. My husband said this to me, his face pale and covered in cold sweat from the corpse, and he grabbed my arm tightly and started walking quickly towards the exit. I panicked at my husband's words and actions that left me speechless. I can't believe my husband would do something like this right before the movie started. I walked against the flow of people entering the theater to watch the movie, and the popcorn I was holding fell to the ground. For a moment, my mind went blank, and I was pulled out without being given time to argue. Everyone who passed me looked at me with annoyed looks, and I felt miserable and helpless. But my husband didn't stop. I bowed my head and desperately apologized to the people around me, but my husband, not caring about my feelings, just stared straight ahead and headed outside. After we left the movie theater, my husband finally stopped and looked back. I felt a sense of anger towards my husband who didn't explain anything to me. What on earth happened? The movie is about to start without any explanation. As I attacked him, he said a word that shocked me. We might be caught up in an incredible situation right now. Tears flowed freely from my eyes when I thought of the great difficulties that lay ahead. My name is Kagawa. I am 40 years old. My husband and I are working and raising our only son, Takuma. Takuma is 10 years old and in the 5th grade of elementary school. Recently, he has grown taller and is in the prime of his development. At dinner time, he fills his bowl with rice in a bowl bigger than my husband and me. My husband and I enjoyed watching Takuma eat his rice with such gusto every day. My husband has a calm personality and his hobby is baseball. He is a kind-hearted husband who thinks of our family first. I am able to spend every day happily surrounded by this family. I am not good at expressing my opinions clearly and I am often influenced by others. However, my husband and Takuma understand that I have a quiet personality and are considerate enough to support me if any problems arise. But my mother-in-law, who lives near our house, casts a dark shadow over my daily life. My parents' house is only a few dozen meters away from the house, so I get called even if I don't want to. Until a few years ago, my brother-in-law and his wife lived with my parents' house, but they divorced because of my mother-in-law, who was very weak and incompetent. Both my brother-in-law and his wife left after a big fight with my mother-in-law. After that, I became my mother-in-law's next target. My mother-in-law, who goes out to play every day without doing any housework, ordered me to go to the parents' house first when I got home from work to make dinner. However, I felt sorry for Takuma who was waiting at home with an empty stomach, so I decided to take out the dinner I made at home and deliver it to the parents' house. I'm always sorry, Asan. Thank you. Siko goes out to play and doesn't come home, and I'm always sorry that I can't do the housework and have to rely on Arisa. When I go deep, I bow my head. Maybe I can deliver a few things to the parents' house with a smile every day because I have a mother-in-law who always tells me how grateful I am. No, not at all. We're in the same boat when times are tough, so when I answered to Gifu, my mother-in-law, who had just come back, said, "Ha. What are you being arrogant about? What are you being reciprocal about? Cooking meals for your parents-in-law is a natural part of a wife's job. You're a useless wife to begin with, and you know you're not worthy of such a talented, kind, and handsome coda? And yet you're the kind of shameless woman who makes even his father bow down to you, she says, glaring at me and standing there with her arms folded. My mother-in-law has always been looking after my husband, and believes that she is the best mother for him and the only woman worthy of standing next to him. So it was clear that she has been looking at me with jealousy and envy ever since we got married. When we are invited to my parents' house as a family, I am like air. My mother-in-law's favorite is Takuma, who looks a lot like my husband, and she wants to take care of Takuma in a foreign way, saying that it's like Kota from when he was little has come back to me. However, Takuma is well aware of the jealousy towards me that my mother-in-law hides behind. When I was the only one who didn't have a zabuton, she offered it to me, saying, "I don't use a zabuton, so you can use it, Mom." When my family was returning from my parents' house and my shoes were missing, she offered her own shoes to me before my husband and said, "Grandma will return them later, so I'll borrow your sandals." She is a reliable presence who always buys for me without changing her expression. I knew that all of this was my mother-in-law's doing, but Takuma always made sure that I wouldn't be sad. Takuma has a calm personality since he was a child and is good at observing his surroundings. He received crisis management education at school and learned how to respond in an emergency, so he says he can act. However, from my perspective, it is difficult to act without hesitation like Takuma just by learning. I think Takuma has always had more courage and a sense of justice than children his age. If possible, I didn't want my son to see such a pathetic mother, but I couldn't escape from the life where my mother-in-law constantly demanded things and harassed me with verbal abuse. It was true that I couldn't stop myself when I remembered the look on Gifu's face that must have been truly apologetic. The three of us share a common hobby, baseball. My husband is a baseball fan. He also used to be absorbed in Little League Baseball when he was little, so on weekends he goes out of his way to accompany Takuma's baseball practice. The sight of Takuma gathering early in the morning on the elementary school grounds and practicing with serious determination is a ray of hope for us as a couple. In addition, Gifu and I rush to cheer him on at practice matches with other Little League teams that are held several times a month, bringing our own lunchboxes. In fact, Gifu has also loved baseball since she was a child, and whenever I invite her to go and cheer him on, she always comes. However, once every few times, my mother-in-law comes along as an extra. This is a whim and she comes along without any notice, so when my mother-in-law comes, I have to run off to get more lunchboxes and drinks. If that were all, it would be better, but my mother-in-law throws terrible arrows, so I always feel left out. Look, the pitcher is timid. What are you doing, being scared or striking out? Are you stupid? Practice again. She also yells at the play of the members other than Takuma. My husband, Gifu, and I have all warned her to stop many times, but my mother-in-law says, "Why are you making a big play like you're bad? Isn't that normal?" I don't know if it's coachy or whatever, but she doesn't say anything, so I'm going to go and do it for her, she argues, spitting. My mother-in-law, who only comes to the occasional practice, probably doesn't know this, but the coach who is teaching us is participating almost free of charge because it's for the sake of the children. Also, the reality is that if you use too strong words to warn children these days, they will become displaced, so she is very considerate in how she communicates. No matter how much I explain it to her, my mother-in-law never tries to change her opinion. Grandma, don't yell at me. It's annoying. Takuma comes in between games and warns my mother-in-law. After that, my mother-in-law refrains from yelling, but instead harasses me so that my husband and Gifu don't find out. Arisa, buy me a drink. The sun is hot, so get a bath towel from home, and she tries to get me out of the situation so that I can't cheer for Takuma. And in the end, the reason Takuma got so angry is because Arisa comes to baseball even though she doesn't know anything. She says that he's become a child who can't accept even a little advice because we don't communicate well on a daily basis, and leaves. I'm sorry. He's been going out at night a lot lately, so I haven't seen him much. I'm glad he came for Takuma today, but I'm sorry he behaved like that. My husband looks strange after hearing Gifu's story. He doesn't do any housework and leaves everything to Arisa, so I think you should talk to your mother about it. She said she would ask her mother when she dropped off Kyo-san. Later, when she dropped off Gifu, my husband asked her mother-in-law, "Where has your mother been wandering around lately? The house is messy too. It's abnormal for Arisa to have to deliver dinner every night." My mother-in-law glared at me, but tried to make up for it in a panic for my husband. "Oh, I'm just going to meet a friend. I don't mind making dinner for you. It would be a waste to throw it away because Arisa makes it and brings it to me. That's why I'm just grateful," she repeated, making excuses. I listened to her silently without arguing because Takuma was there during the conversation. However, my husband still seemed to be hiding in front of me and thinking about something. Gifu's father also clearly didn't believe his mother-in-law's words. With each of our intentions intersecting, we left the house. "Mom, I'm a bit worried. I'll investigate a bit behind the scenes." Quote. She said to me bluntly, "It's a bother for Arisa, so could you please continue to deliver dinner as usual for a while? I feel like even if we argue here, we'll just make excuses and it'll end there." Saying that, he bows his head. Of course. Even the dinner thing was more like for Dad than for Mom. "I'm fine," she said, smiling brightly, and the three of us walked home side by side, with the moon shining beautifully. As a result of his daily efforts, Takuma was selected as a regular for the next game. Takuma is the only fifth grader to be selected as a regular. This youth baseball club has a hot class, and even getting one chance at bat at Hirodai is amazing enough, but when he becomes a regular, our family hugs each other and shares the joy. Is it true that he will contact Gifu right away? Well done. He's a great grandson. He was happy and said with tears in his eyes that he would definitely come to cheer on the day of the game. However, my mother-in-law, who happened to be home early, happened to be listening to this story behind Gifu. Soon my husband's smartphone rang and said, "I'm looking forward to Takuma's game. Takuma is really excellent, just like Kota. He said that he is my pride and joy." I felt a little depressed, thinking that my mother-in-law had heard about it, but I was so happy that Takuma had been selected as a regular player that I didn't mind it as much as usual. As the three of us were discussing the day, my smartphone also started to ring. I opened the message and it said, "I'll be there for Takuma on the day of his match, so can you stop making the usual shoddy lunch? I'd like some boiled bamboo shoots and maida, some chirashi sushi, grilled fish, and some famous flour ohishi." It said, "Put it in a nice porridge and make it look nice so the other parents won't call you a horse." I froze, staring at my smartphone. On the day of the match, I have to get up early and leave, so there's no way I could make a lunch like this. Moreover, it's ridiculous to make something that spoils easily while only caring about how it looks in the sunlight. Then, Takuma glanced sideways at the screen of his smartphone and said, "If it's something like what Grandma requested, I won't have the energy to play in the afternoon match. I'd like the usual mother's stamina lunchbox. I have to concentrate on the match all day." Rather than making a mineral lunch for my mother-in-law, I decided to make Takuma's usual bento with an assortment of minerals so that he wouldn't run out of energy. If I listen to my mother-in-law, who makes everything an event for herself, I will lose sight of what is truly important. Takuma's words suddenly made me realize my heart. What, Mom went to Arisa again for something? Really? But Arisa and Takuma don't need to worry about it. It's an important day for our family. Let's move with Takuma as our priority. My husband agreed with our opinion, and somehow I felt the weight in my heart lighten. And time passed, and the day of the match arrived. The moment I woke up in the morning and opened the curtains, my shoulders slumped. Outside, the light was terrible and heavy mountain grains were falling on the windows. Not only that, but sometimes even the loud roars were echoing. I had prepared a lunch just in case, but Takuma came down from the second floor rubbing his eyes. "I don't think he'll be able to make it today," he muttered as he looked out the window. It was a great opportunity to be a regular player. After that, I received a call from Takeshi and was told that the match was cancelled. Takuma was dejected and his husband tried to comfort him, but he was still depressed and couldn't bear it. Meanwhile, my parents-in-law came to visit us and said, "Takuma, today was disappointing. Gifu suggested that we go with Grandpa to buy the point spikes that Takuma wanted today." Takuma's eyes were completely different from the dejected look he had had up until now, and he said, "Is it okay, Grandpa? I have a pair of shoes that I've always wanted, can I buy them?" I said. I was relieved to see Takuma like that. Quote, "Okay, then let's go right away. Ta. Arisa, I'll buy Takuma a little bit today. Let's have lunch together." With that, the two of them went out to the shopping mall with big smiles on their faces. The one left behind was my mother-in-law. She had been in a bad mood since she arrived and hadn't said a word, but after Takuma and the others said it, she suddenly said to me, "You're not only a wife, but also a terrible mother." My husband and I were left speechless by my mother-in-law's sudden yelling. Her angry gaze was completely directed at me. The weather forecast predicted rain today, didn't it? If that's the case, you could change the venue to a roofed area. Look, the nearby baseball field has a roof over there, but the game is still going on. A mother should do everything she can. How far have you gone? I was deeply surprised by my mother-in-law's misaligned values. It's true that a mother wants to do anything for her son. However, there is a limit to what I can do for this day. Mom, the game is a 100-person game, including the team members and the opposing team. It's impossible to inform everyone that we're changing the game. Besides, the game will be held again, even if it's not today. I held back my feelings and told my mother-in-law, but I wanted to see my grandson's Sunny team today, on this day. It's your fault that I couldn't see you today. Useless. You're a mother, but you have no value. My mother-in-law's eyes shine with a sharp light as she continues to make unreasonable accusations against me. My husband, unable to bear it any longer, says, "Mom, that's an exaggeration. The weather is no one's fault. Even for baseball, you need to make a reservation months in advance to rent something. Don't just blame Riza. She's doing a good job," she assures my mother-in-law. But my mother-in-law doesn't listen to my husband's words at all and gets even more heated. Are you going to protect your daughter-in-law too? I will never accept such a useless Deku. I'm doing this for Takuma and Kota, so I'm going to be ruthless. I feel so sorry for you too, I can't stand it. My mother-in-law glares at me while pretending to blow tears. My mother-in-law's words are like a sharp blade, gradually widening the wound in my heart. Tears welled up in my eyes, and every time I tried to speak calmly, a deep sadness welled up inside me. However, even if I continued to respond emotionally, I don't think my mother-in-law would be satisfied. I looked down and desperately tried to hold back the tears. In the end, my mother-in-law said, "Look, can you support Kota and Takuma like this, the tragic heroine?" She left, saying that it would be much better for me to get divorced and live with Kota and Takuma. I felt that my existence was denied and I was further cornered mentally. My husband comforted me by stroking my back for a while. "Yes. Let's go to a movie to change our mood." He invited me to a movie, saying that I would probably think about my mother if I stayed at home. Since I was single, I have made it a habit to watch a movie at the cinema when I feel sad. It's the only way for me to refresh myself, as I can't easily let out my feelings. I nodded and my husband and I headed to the cinema. The cinema was a little crowded, as it was a holiday. However, there were plenty of empty seats, so I sat down in my designated seat. Then my husband suddenly said, "Let's get out of here." He grabbed my arm and headed for the exit. The movie is about to start. I hurriedly told my husband, and he replied with a pale face that I mustn't look back. I was confused and scared by the atmosphere of my husband, which I had never seen before. I was pulled out of the movie theater without a word, and finally I asked my husband, who had stopped. "Hey, what's wrong? Did something happen?" When I asked him, he said, trembling his lips, that he saw my mother and a young man together in the movie theater. I was shocked for a moment, and my mind went blank in confusion. Meanwhile, Futoshi's gentle smile flashed across my mind, and my heart tightened. My husband, worried about me, who was confused and unable to stand there, said, "Arisa, Takuma will probably be back soon, so can you wait at home? I'll follow you to check on my mother's affair. You go home first." I went home first with a nervous feeling. In the late afternoon, Takuma and Gifu arrived with big smiles on their faces, and my husband, with a complicated look on his face, came home a little late as he put on the shoes that were bought for him at the entrance. "Since you're here, why don't you have dinner with us? Takuma would prefer that, right?" "Yes. Grandpa, you can stay in my room until dinner. I'm collecting baseball cards now, so I'll show you my collection." Saying that, the two of them went up to the second floor. When my husband was alone with me, he said, "Look at this." As expected, my mother and that young man seemed to be intimate. I was shocked when I saw the smartphone that was handed to me. It was clearly showing the two of them walking with their arms wrapped around each other like lovers. After that, we suppressed our feelings and finished dinner, and were drinking tea after the meal when suddenly my mother-in-law came into the house with an angry look on her face. "Hey, why didn't you bring dinner? You're a really incompetent daughter-in-law who forgot about dinner on top of your loss. Don't mess with me, you're trying to make me feel like a married couple." Honestly, after seeing that photo, I didn't want to deliver dinner just for my mother-in-law. I thought she wouldn't need dinner if she was with a young man anyway, so I didn't deliver dinner for the first time today. Then my husband attacked my mother-in-law with a photo he had taken. "Mom, you're walking around clinging to this young man and betraying my father, yet you have the nerve to say such terrible things to Arisa." My mother-in-law was shown the photo and was frozen with her eyes wide open. When I explained the photo to Gifu, he exploded with anger that he had been holding for many years and said, "How dare you do something so embarrassing like this? So what? You're attacking me for not bringing dinner just once? You should have made it while you were with this man. You should be ashamed of yourself." Gifu shouted at my mother-in-law. My heart was shaken by complicated emotions, but the worst part was Takuma's words. "I've always hated my grandmother." I yelled at her, saying that she was a terrible person for doing something like this to hurt my beloved grandfather and mother, and went up to the second floor. My mother-in-law was rejected by the whole family and was completely devastated. "But I can't do this with you anymore. It's a divorce." Gifu declares that she has already made up her mind and that she should leave. My mother-in-law finally realized that even if she regretted it, it was too late. After that, the two officially divorced. My mother-in-law packed her things and left the family home. The young man she had an affair with was not serious about my mother-in-law, and my mother-in-law, who had contributed a considerable amount of money to her, was abandoned like a rag, with only other debts. After many discussions, my wife and I decided to move to the family home. This was also a way of respecting Takuma's opinion. The family home is spacious and we can play games and play catch. When Takuma came home from school, he said he wanted to play baseball on the days when there was no practice, so it was just right. After a few months, I finally settled down in my life at the family home, and I suddenly started to worry about my mother-in-law. Kazu is currently working part-time and is busy paying off her debts. Whenever I have time, I worry about my mother-in-law and go to check on her. She became mentally unstable and I was worried for a while, but recently she started receiving treatment within the clinic and seems to have settled down. Although she is mentally stable, she often calls my husband and asks him to meet Takuma. She has started to ask him to come to see Takuma. However, my husband has repeatedly refused, saying that he cannot meet Takuma. However, my mother-in-law's mind is increasingly convinced that it is my fault that my husband says that. Furthermore, the side effects of the medicine and the unbearable loneliness make my mother-in-law have hallucinations and paranoia. Not knowing that such a situation exists, we were discussing whether it would be okay to invite my mother-in-law to Takuma's game soon. Then, I will be a regular in the next game, so I will be the one to play in that game. I was truly happy at Takuma's kindness when he said he would invite me to the game again, even though I had been annoyed by my mother-in-law's heckling before. One weekday, as the game was approaching, I looked up at the clock as usual while typing on my computer. Takuma must be home by now. I wonder if he's sulking because there's no practice today. I muttered and reflexively opened the smartphone app. When we lived together, I would get a notification on my smartphone when I got home, but now I feel relieved that Gifu greets Takuma. I was about to close my smartphone and put it in my jacket's breast pocket when I suddenly got a call from Gifu. Arisa, something's wrong. Takuma hasn't come home from school. I feel like everything has suddenly gone dark. Anxiety runs through my body, and I feel like my heart is being grabbed and I can't live. There have been times before when Takuma has come home late. I thought that it was inevitable that he would be a boy and would get a late notification if he went to a friend's house, but this time I had a premonition. I immediately called the elementary school and was told that Takuma had already left school. Moreover, my hands holding the smartphone were shaking a long time ago, and I had a premonition of the worst. Please stay safe. I called my husband over and over again. Then, the two of us split up and contacted Taku's friends and ball buddies. Still, there was no word of Takuma being seen, so I left the office and ran around the neighborhood looking for him. My husband and stepfather ran around places where Takuma might go, calling out to him loudly, but they couldn't find him. Our family was in a complete panic and couldn't stay calm. Then suddenly, I got a phone call. The person who was the mentor was my mother-in-law. When I answered the phone, I heard, "Arisa, there's something I need to tell you. Takuma, you're with me now. We're going to heaven together now." Quote. For a moment, I couldn't understand the meaning of the words. You mean live here? The moment those two letters crossed my mind, I was hit with a feeling as if the blood in my whole body was flowing backwards. Stop it, give me back Takuma. I screamed, clutching my smartphone. It's all your fault that this happened. You took Kota away from me, and you didn't let me meet Takuma. So Takuma's death is your fault. Takuma and I will die together. And I will always be wrapped around Takuma's soul and Takuma will be mine forever. My mother-in-law said in a gentle voice. Stop it. I will die in Takuma's place. So, Takuma will be the only one crying and begging me to go, but my mother-in-law said, I'll think about it if you come in Takuma's place. If you die alone and lonely instead, you will never be separated again, my mother-in-law said in a poignant voice. I had no intention of grabbing the small ray of hope given to me by my mother-in-law and speaking. No matter what intentions are hidden behind it, I will do anything if Takuma is saved. My mother-in-law told me to come to the roof of the largest university hospital in the city. I immediately told my husband what the phone call was and called a taxi. My husband and Gifu split up and contacted the police department University Hospital, and the three of them got into a taxi that arrived in front of their house and headed to their mother-in-law and Takuma. Please, God, please don't let my mother-in-law die soon. I will die in her place. Please, I pray desperately, putting my hands together in prayer. My whole body was shaking with fear that Takuma would be taken away from me, but that didn't matter. I just wanted to make sure that Takuma was safe as soon as possible. When we arrived at the university hospital, my wife and I and Gifu found my mother-in-law and Takuma standing on the roof. I couldn't just stand there and tried to run up to the roof. However, the police, who had already arrived, stopped me. Please talk to me. Takuma Makuma. My voice was hollow and humble. I tried to rebel against the strong force that was holding me down many times, but my physical strength was wearing out just like my heart. Meanwhile, on the roof, Takuma was frightened but quietly trying to persuade his mother-in-law. Takuma kept the strong mental strength and calm he learned from baseball and said, "Let's die together. If we do that, no one will get in our way. We can come together anytime. Takuma. My precious son. Come back to my stomach." The mother-in-law, in a state of chaos, is trying to pull Takuma out of the fence with her husband and eyes unsettled. Takuma remembers what he learned at school about the sun and the wind, and while telling him his honest feelings, he is conscious of not jumping off. The mother-in-law still does not sympathize with Takuma's feelings, and says, "You will no longer suffer or be sad. Come on, let's feel better together." Quote. The two of them are getting closer and closer to the fence. I look up from below, blaming myself for not being able to protect Takuma, and I am overcome with despair. The runaway of my distorted emotions has not stopped. At the moment she tries to pull Takuma further closer to the fence, Takuma shakes off my mother-in-law's hand with the reflexes he has honed through baseball, and at the same time, grabs her arm tightly. Takuma's whole body is shaking with fear, and his teeth are chattering. Still, Takuma screams in a voice that seems to be bursting. I don't want to die. I want to go home. That voice cut through the silence of the rooftop, reaching our ears as we watched below. Then, with his small body, Takuma pulled his mother-in-law to him with all his might and embraced her. I'm not sure if Takuma's desperate resistance and the cry of his soul pierced my mother-in-law's heart, but the light returned to her eyes, which had been hazy as if possessed by something. Then, after one word, Takuma's mother-in-law said Takuma's name and stood there, completely exhausted. It was the moment that Takuma's power pulled her back from the world of the madness to reality. I don't know if it was as a mother or a grandmother, but perhaps the consciousness of a human being that remained in my mother-in-law's heart was revived. In the next moment, police officers arrived on the roof and protected Takuma and my mother-in-law. I was surrounded by police officers, and after seeing Takuma being torn away from my mother-in-law, I fainted while still calm. I don't know how much time had passed since then. I slowly regained consciousness in a bed in a dimly lit hospital room. The first thing I saw in my blurry vision was Takuma. Staring at his anxious face, I stretched out my hands and hugged him tightly. Takuma. I started to cry out and felt the warmth of his body. And fear. Various emotions flooded me and I couldn't bear it, so I cried out loud. Mom, I was scared. Takuma was also released from the tension and was shedding tears. I blew away the large tears that were streaming from his eyes with the pads of my thumbs and hugged him again. Although he was well built, Takuma was only 10 years old. The gun pressure was too much for a young mind. Takuma, you're safe. I'm so glad that you're safe after such a terrible thing happened to you. I continued to stroke Takuma's back while crying. But the next moment I couldn't believe my ears. But I think Grandma was scared too. That's why she did what she did. I never thought I would hear such a mature statement from my own son. Takuma had the kindness and strength to consider his mother-in-law's feelings, despite the fact that he was the one who had caused him such a horrible experience. I felt my heart tighten as I stared into Takuma's eyes. Before I knew it, my husband, who had just finished questioning, was standing behind Takuma. Are you okay? I just heard from the police about what happened at that time. I was shocked when my husband told me about the situation at the time. Takuma shook off his mother-in-law's hand on his own judgment, and then he took her arm and moved her away from the fence. Takuma used his strength trained in baseball and made an instant decision to protect himself and his mother-in-law by himself. Tears welled up in my eyes again. Then Takuma said, "Actually, I've been telling Grandma that I'm going to play in another game, so I want you to come and watch." He said that the next game was expected to be sunny, so he might be able to hit a home run. Maybe his feelings reached her. Takuma's pure heart must have pierced my mother-in-law's heart. In the end, my mother-in-law, who had acted so insanely, slumped her shoulders and shed tears. I couldn't hide my surprise at Takuma's brave actions and kind words to my mother-in-law, as my husband described them. A strong feeling that overcame fear and shook the other person's heart. Takuma had developed strength and kindness that far exceeded my imagination. Takuma, you've really become strong. I look at Takuma with a trembling voice. But at the same time, anger wells up inside me at my mother-in-law, who tried to take away my grandchild's future. Actually, I heard from the police officer that he said sorry to Takuma while his mother was being taken away. Apparently he called out to Grandma, saying that she was acting a little strange. I guess he wanted to apologize in his own way. An apology? If he had any intention of apologizing, he shouldn't have put Takuma through such a horrible experience in the first place. It is entirely conceivable that Takuma's life would change from now on if he felt in danger. However, I swallowed those words. At that time, I called out to my grandmother that everything was fine. My mother-in-law said that she would never see Takuma again. She tried to reach out to Takuma. However, Takuma did not offer his hand and replied, "Yes. I won't see him anymore." Quote. At that time, my mother-in-law was devastated, knowing that she had truly lost everything. A while later, the police contacted her husband and told him about her new technique. As a result of a psychiatric evaluation, my mother-in-law was diagnosed as having lost her mind and body. She was not in a state where she could be held criminally responsible, and we were confronted with the cruel reality that she could not be held criminally responsible under the law. However, in return, my mother-in-law was forced to be admitted to a psychiatric hospital and isolated from society. Ishii's diagnosis shows that my mother-in-law's condition was extremely serious. The side effects of the high drug use she had been taking for many years, the loneliness of living alone, and the financial stress of debt that she could not confide in anyone. These factors intertwined in a complex way, gradually eating away at my mother-in-law's mind, eventually causing her symptoms of schizophrenia to become apparent. Her abnormal behavior and situation at that time meant that her mind was taken over by the disease, and she was admitted to a psychiatric hospital. After receiving appropriate treatment, my mother-in-law gradually regained her composure. Her former calm expression began to return, and she would often speak degrading words to us. However, unable to accept the reality that she had been rejected by Takuma, her symptoms worsened again, and her heart was once again dragged into deep darkness. Eventually, my mother-in-law lost contact with reality and her ideals, and retreated into a world of delusions. In that world, my mother-in-law and Takuma lived happily together, and she spent her days lovingly supporting my mother-in-law. Without anyone to say anything to her, my mother-in-law, who was shut away in her delusional world, her only emotional refuge, continued to live a happy life with the imaginary family she had created in her head. It took a long time for our family to recover from this incident. Although the incident was deeply engraved in each of our hearts as a big unforgettable wound, it also became an opportunity to recognize the strength of family ties. The four of us, including my father, were a family of four. As we started a new life, we embraced each other's feelings and stepped forward into the future. Takuma's baseball was the catalyst for us to get back to our daily lives. Takuma had been taking a break from practice for a while after the incident, but his eyes lit up as he said that he wanted to play baseball with everyone, and his stopped daily life started to move again. When I took Takuma to the baseball stadium for the first time in a while, all the members came and surrounded him. Then he said, "When can you come? Let's play baseball together soon." Quote. I looked at Takuma and my husband, who exchanged words with smiles on their faces, and tears overflowed with joy. From then on, we started walking towards a new future while cherishing our family ties. My husband is more considerate of his family than ever before, and protects us with a warm heart. For a while, Gifu let the incident go. He couldn't stop his wife from marrying him. He said he couldn't forgive his own weakness. It seemed like he was putting his past actions into practice. But it was Takuma who changed Gifu's mind. "Grandpa, I'm going to wear the shoes you bought me the other day and play in the next game. Come and watch." Gifu couldn't refuse when Takuma said that with his unyielding smile. In this way, with Takuma at the center, we regained our peace of mind. Through this series of events, I once again realized that family ties are more important than anything else. To be honest, I will never be able to forgive my mother-in-law for getting Takuma involved. However, she also taught us the horror of loneliness and mental illness. That's why I strongly felt that I wanted to cherish my husband and Takuma, who are beside me, and my connection with Gifu more than anything else. Takuma now has a dream to aim for other than baseball. I want to work in a job that helps people in the future. I was surprised and asked him why, and the ambulance man who helped my mother and the policeman who helped me, they were all very serious and spoke to me and were genuinely worried about my mother's health. I saw people like that up close and thought that I wanted to be like them. I was deeply moved by Takuma's change of heart, and I told him, "Takuma, I will support you in your dreams with all my heart. It's very important to hold on to your dreams. I promised to watch over you and your bright future." Quote. No matter what difficulties we face, we will face them and build a happy future. With the bond of family in our hearts, we took our first strong steps forward.